guys, Max here at MaksWerks, and in today's video we're going to talk about building a workbench. So up front, a workbench is a very personal thing for guys that spend a lot of time in the garage. And your workbench really needs to be custom built for the space. That's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be custom building a unit that's going to fit right here at the front of my garage. And because of the things I use it for, I'm going to be building it very sturdily. If you do primarily electronics projects, for instance, a good workbench is still important, but you don't need to use half-inch ply or three-quarter ply. You can use quarter-inch plywood, and you can use 2x4s instead of 4x4s, and so on and so forth. And this video is going to kind of assume that you already know how to use saws, screws, drills, and so on and so forth. A couple of products I want to talk about before we get started. First is this stuff. Triple thick polyurethane. This stuff is great. I like to have my workbenches coated in this. I work with a lot of oily engine parts, a lot of grimy stuff, and this makes cleanup a lot easier, doesn't stain the wood. The other thing is, use screws, and when you use screws, don't just use wood screws, use what are called construction screws. The reason you want to do this is because they actually have a Torx bit in the head, and they come with the Torx bit, and it's a standard Torx bit for all construction screws. And basically it just makes it a lot easier. You can use the impact on them. It's just a lot easier to put everything together. So basically the design is I'm going to use 6 40-inch 4x4 posts. We're going to make a lattice out of 2x4s. It's going to sit along the top. And basically all this space will become a workbench with storage up underneath, and then eventually we will be adding storage up on this wall. The workbench isn't going to be bolted to the wall just yet, because I still need to do the epoxy on the floors at some point. And then over here, where the water softener is, we're actually going to build up around this and make a shelf so that you can use this for storage. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to show you guys just a few small things as we move along, just so you can get a better idea of how to do stuff. So here we are outside cutting the posts. You want to make sure you have sawhorses. These are actually ones from IKEA that are designed for like internal decoration, give you a rustic feel. These are not proper sawhorses. You really shouldn't be doing things like this. This is all I have at the moment. The other thing is, so we're going to make these 40 inches each. So what it is, I mark from the end 40 inches. I'm going to use what's called a carpenter's triangle, and you line it up like that, and it'll give you a straight line. And then you can just mark it. And then you can also, what I like to do is I like to go around and mark the other side on a 4x4, because you're going to have to make multiple passes unless you have a big wood chop saw or something. In terms of the saw itself, this is what I'm using. It's a little handheld Ryobi. Came with my drill, and for being a small, fairly lightweight drill, or circ saw, is actually pretty effective. So let's get to cutting. So when all is said and done, this was a total scrap for my 4x4s. And one of the things that's important is, when you plan these projects out, you want to make sure you plan them out in advance far enough that you can kind of make sure that you buy enough materials to do the job, but you don't really need to go crazy. Like, it's good when you can basically end up with this much left over, and that's all you really need. So this is basically the layout. We got 3 along one front, and then there'll be 3 in the back, and they're the 5-foot mark right there is centered on the middle post. We're actually going to use these lag bolts from an old project to secure the 2x4. And what you want to do is you want to drill pilot holes, and as you can see, the thread is just a bit bigger than this drill. I could probably use one drill size larger, but this will be just fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole dead center, and then we're going to lag these together, and then we have half of our workbench put together. So there we go. We got our framing done. Again, you can see these the construction screws. They also have if you take a real close look at them, they actually have a channel cut in, makes them a lot easier to get started. And of course they got the hex bit on the end to let them use a torque gun to put them in. So basically I'm just cutting inner pieces of wood, 2x4s right here, and then 2 more on this side to add framing weight. and structure to it. As you can see, I like a tall workbench. I like to be able to have everything right in front of me, not be working down. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bolt all of these in on this side, and then I'll move the workbench out and then do all the screws along the back side. And then we can start cutting out the plywood to go on top and talk about finishing it. Alright, at this point, as you can see, the workbench is all framed up. We're all good to go on that front. It's super duper solid. And so now we're going to put down a 1/2 inch plywood sheet. So we're going to take a few measurements. Basically, you want to know the exact width, which in this case is just 28 3/8. And you want to measure it everywhere. And 28 3/8. And if we go all the way down here, 28 3/8. So that's our width. It's a 4x8 sheet, so we got 8 feet, and then I got a second sheet that we'll use to make the second half over here. And that's it. So there we go, the workbench is pretty much done. I left this spot over here. I haven't cut a piece of wood 1/2 inch for it yet, because there's going to be a parts washer over here, and I'm still not sure how I want to put it in, so I'm going to leave that off for this video. But we are going to go ahead and coat this with poly to get this sitting while I go and build the shelf for that over there. So this stuff right here, you can pick it up at any Home Depot or whatever. You use a screwdriver, just open up the can. It's got kind of a nice milky consistency to it. I don't know if you can see that or not without me spilling any, but you just want to get an old screwdriver or something, and you want to, make sure you mix it up really well. So this is pre-sanded plywood. I bought it this way exactly for this reason, because I'm too lazy to sand stuff, and it's only like $1 more. So you want to make sure you stir this pretty well. You want to make sure the temperature outside is good, and you just want to use a nice brush and go with the grain, and then just basically just spread it around. I actually kind of treat it like the same way I apply stain and stuff. I'll actually just pour out some onto the table, and then basically I'll pour some out onto the table, and then I'll just basically smooth it all out. So when we get back, I'll show you guys what it looks like after the first layer of poly. So there we go. In conclusion, we got the workbench built. I ended up finishing out this half of it too. We're going to wait until I get the parts washer and then figure out how I'm going to install it. I ended up putting a shelf over here, so this way that this is protected from stuff falling on it, and I can still use the storage space above it. The first thick coat is starting to sort of dry. Normally it's like a couple hours, let it dry. Probably later tonight I'll go back through and give it one more good thick coat, because the wood really sucks it in initially. But that's it. So remember, a couple of things. You want to make sure you measure your workbench and build it to the space that's appropriate. You want to make sure it's the right height. I like to work standing up, so I made it so I can work standing up rather than sitting down. You want to make sure it's well supported so that you can place heavy things like motors and whatnot on your workbench. Countersink all the screws, use construction screws, so you can use an impact gun to drive them in. And that's pretty much it. Now I got to do a whole lot of reorganizing in the shed, the garage, and trying to make the most of the space. But at least for now, we have this. Thanks, guys.